Okay guys, we are on page 137 of your notes. We're looking at iteration formula. This is a topic that's on your GCSE spec. You may or may not have done it, or you may have forgotten about it, but all it is if you have a solution, an approximation to a root, you can use iteration formula that gets you a little bit closer to the root. So it's a numerical way of finding a root rather than doing it algebraically. So this is a really simple example here. So here you've got xn plus 1 is a half x n plus 1. Okay, so this xn plus 1, I have mentioned it before, but this just means the next term or the next value. And that's just your previous value. And the question says work out the value of x2, x3 and x4. And they always have to give you the first value, obviously, because if you don't have the first value, how can you work out the next one? So here I've got x1 is 0.5 and it said work out x2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that formula. So to find the next value, I'm going to use my previous value and do half 0.5 times my previous value plus 1. So I'm going to do 0.5 times 0.5 plus 1. And you just type that into your calculator. I mean, obviously, most of you could probably work it out by hand, but 0.5 times 0.5 plus 1. And even though it gives it to me in fraction form, I am going to change it to a decimal, and I'll explain why in a bit. 1.25. And then it says work out x3. So that's going to be, the third term is going to be 0.5 times my previous term, so 0.5 times x2, which is 1.25, plus 1. And then again, I type that into my calculator. So I do 0.5 times. Now, rather than doing that every single time, I'm just going to use my answer button. So times answer plus 1. And it gives me my next term, which is 1.625. And x4, I'm just going to press equals like that. And it gives me my next term, which is 1.8125. Okay, so that bit there is done. And then the question says, on the diagram below, draw a diagram to show how conversion takes place. Unfortunately, as you know, a lot of your diagrams are missing from your notes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick sketch. Essentially what I'm drawing, because they've given me this iterative formula, that I'm going to draw y equals x. And I'm going to draw y equals 0.5x plus 1 on the same diagram. Okay, and where they intersect would be our root. So what I'm going to do is, just bear with me a sec. There is my set of axes. It's quite rough. I'm going to draw y equals x. Okay, not brilliant. Should go through 0, 0 there. So this is y equals x. And then y equals 0.5x plus 1. That's got a less steep gradient and it's got y-intercept of 1. So that would look more like that, and that would be 1 there. And my initial, and actually where are we starting? We're starting at, so there's the root, isn't it? You can see that that's the root. So I'm just going to label this y equals 0.5x plus 1. Okay, but the question said start at x1 equals 0.5. So x1 equals 0.5 would be somewhere here. So there's x1, which is 0.5, and then you always go up to not y equals x, essentially. Normally it's a curve, and I always tend to say curve and then line, but I'm going to go up to y equals a half x plus 1. So I'm going to draw a line up like that. Well, it's a dotted line, and then I'm going to go across like that. And when you go across, that's essentially using, that's my new x value that I'm inputting in, which was 1.25, and then sorry, that's x1 being inputted 0.5. You go across, and if you read it off, that there would be x2, which is 1.25, and then you repeat the process. So you go up from there, you go across, and then that next approximate value will be x3, which is 1.625. And then you'd repeat the process. You go up and you'd get closer and closer to where they intersect. And if you kept pressing equals, I'm just going back to my calculator, I'm hoping it's, well actually, it's gone off. But if you kept pressing the answer button, it would essentially, eventually reach x equals 2. And can you see that that diagram looks very much like a staircase? So they call this a staircase convergence, because it's converging to a root where they intersect, and it looks like a staircase. Okay, so that's the first question.